They called her the Butcher of Trelva, 7, an alien warrior feared across 3 systems. But the one thing she never saw coming was a promise from a crying little human boy. The skies above Trelva, 7 burned orange and black, clouds of smoke rising from the battlefield. The air was thick with ash, the ground torn by artillery and the screams of the dying. Among the wreckage, General Valera of the iridescent blades moved like a silent predator, her blade humming softly, her armor cracked but unyielding. She had lost count of how many humans she had killed, until she heard a child crying. Tucked between the shattered hull of a dropship and the still smoking remains of a turret, she found him. A small human boy, maybe 6 years old, covered in soot and blood, clutching a stuffed animal to his chest like it could protect him. He didn't run. He didn't scream. He just looked up at her, eyes wide, lip trembling. "Are you gonna kill me?" he asked. Valera froze. This was a battlefield. There were no civilians here. No survivors. No mercy. But she couldn't move. The boy wiped his nose with a dirty sleeve. "You're really tall. And shiny." She didn't answer. "I think you're pretty," he said, as if that solved something deep and ancient. "And when I grow up, I'm gonna marry you." Valera blinked. She had seen entire platoons beg for their lives. She had watched captains set themselves on fire to avoid capture. But this tiny thing, bruised and shaking, offering her a future like he understood what it meant? She crouched low, her cracked armor hissing as it adjusted. "You're too young to make promises," she said coldly. He shrugged. "Then I'll grow up faster." And he smiled. A real smile, one untouched by war. She didn't know why she picked him up, or why she carried him back through enemy lines, past stunned soldiers who dared not question her. She just knew she couldn't leave him behind. He stayed in her care for 6 weeks. He made her laugh once. Only once. But it was the first time in years she remembered what it was to be alive instead of simply surviving. Then human forces reclaimed him. She returned the boy silently to a soldier who saluted her with trembling hands. As the dropship lifted off, the boy looked down at her through the glass. "Wait for me," he said. She didn't nod, but she watched until he was out of sight. 10 years passed. The war ended. Treaties signed. Armies disbanded. Valera, once called Butcher, then General, became a relic. A symbol of war kept alive in a galaxy desperate for peace. She retired, vanished into the cold halls of political silence. Until one day he returned. The doors of the council hall burst open. A man in a black Terran elite uniform walked through, tall, calm, built like someone who had survived a dozen battlefields. He walked with purpose, ignoring protests, eyes locked forward. In his hand was a small velvet box. Valera stood as he approached. "You," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "I told you I'd grow fast." The council was in chaos. Alien dignitaries shouted. A few guards raised weapons. But he didn't flinch. He opened the box. A silver ring glinted in the light. "You said I was too small to make promises," he said. "But I meant it. And now I'm here to keep it." And for a heartbeat, it was just them again. The alien warrior and the little boy who once smiled through the fire. Then a red dot flickered on his chest. The sniper had arrived. Valera's eyes widened. She moved. Because no one, no empire, no traitor, no old grudge, was going to steal him from her again. The council chamber had been emptied, sanitized, silenced. Official reports said it was an isolated threat. But everyone in the galaxy knew better. Someone had fired a shot inside the most protected chamber of interspecies diplomacy. And the target had survived. Worse, he had smiled. Ryan sat in a quiet room, staring at the broken armor plate Valera had left on the table. A reminder of how close death had come again, and how quickly she had moved to protect him. Like she had all those years ago. The door hissed open. Valera walked in, wearing a new set of armor. Sleek. Sharper. The silver glinted like the edge of a storm. "You should have let me handle the council myself," she said. "I'm not here to let things happen anymore," Ryan said, rising. "I came because I knew someone would try to stop this." "Us." He nodded. She walked over, her hand brushing over the old plate. The shot was from a Lursian rifle. Long range, plasma-charged. Only one guild uses it. Ryan frowned. The Narcal Syndicate. Exactly. They exchanged a look. Valera stepped closer. They were hired. Which means there's someone in this council afraid of what it means if we stand together again. Afraid of what it means if the human who saved me keeps his promise. Ryan chuckled softly. 10 years ago, I said I'd marry you when I grew up. You were bleeding out in my arms, barely 19. And you kissed my forehead and told me to live. I didn't think you actually would, she whispered, half a smile on her lips. Ryan leaned in. I did more than live. He pulled something from his jacket. A ring, not human-made. Forged from old Zalara steel, the kind only her people used in sacred vows. You left this behind. Her eyes widened. You stole that. I kept it. She reached out, hand trembling just slightly. You held on to a warrior's vow. I held on to hope. Before she could respond, the room's hollow projector flared to life. A council alert. Valera turned to it, jaw tightening. 2 council delegates dead, the system announced. Ship destroyed en route to Earth Embassy. Survivors mention a mark burned into hull, a broken star inside a ring. Valera cursed under her breath. The old war symbol of the Kernan exiles. They were wiped out. No, Ryan said, eyes narrowing. They went dark. We both know what that means. Valera nodded slowly. Another enemy rises. One that doesn't want peace. Or alliances. They want chaos. They want to stop us before we begin. Outside, the city burned. Protests. Explosions. Panic. Inside, she turned to him. Then maybe it's time they remember who we were during the war. Ryan stepped forward, hand in hers. And who we are now. The two of them stood not as a couple caught in political tides, but as soldiers who had survived the worst and would now face something greater. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about defiance. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when a human and a Zalaran stood side by side again. The fortress city of Caldrex had not known war in 100 years. Its walls were etched with peace runes, its gates open to diplomats and dreamers. But that morning, the skies above it turned black, not with storm clouds, but with ships. Unmarked, silent, and deadly. Valera stood on the outer wall, wind pulling at her white cloak, the mark of her lineage gleaming on her shoulder. But today, she wore no crown, only armor. Ryan stood beside her, his ring still on her finger, his weapon magnetically locked to his back. A standard Earth pulse rifle, heavily modified. He looked to her. They didn't waste time. They were waiting for a reason, she replied. Me choosing you gave them one. And they're going to regret it. The enemy fleet hovered in perfect silence. Then a transmission cut through the air, projected in old war code. Return the daughter of Zalara to us. Or fall beside her. Valera didn't flinch. They think I'm property. They're going to learn your fire, Ryan growled. Below, Zalaran civilians were being evacuated. Guard drones took position. A few elder warriors took their ancient blades from ceremonial walls. Ryan's fingers curled. He remembered that feeling, when the first shot hasn't been fired, but your heartbeat tells you it's coming. A thunderous boom cracked the silence. A plasma lance slammed into the outer gate. Screaming alarms followed. Enemy soldiers began descending in drop pods, burning streaks in the sky. Within moments, the fields outside were a war zone. Valera drew her blade. It shimmered with ancient blue energy. Stay behind me, she said. Ryan laughed. You really think that's going to happen? And then the ground shook. Explosions rocked the southern wall. Metal screeched. Drones fired into the sky, but the enemy had cloaking armor, humanoid figures blinking in and out of visibility, cutting down defenders as they advanced. Ryan and Valera jumped into the fray. She moved like a storm. Every step was deliberate. Every swing of her blade painted the air with light. Her enemies dropped before her. Some didn't even see her move. Ryan covered her back, rifle spitting heat and metal. A cloaked attacker lunged from behind, but he ducked, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and slammed him to the ground before shooting point blank. "They're targeting civilians," Valera called out. "Not if we get to their command node." She nodded. West Tower. Together they ran, a blur of gunfire and blade, carving through chaos. By the time they reached the tower, it was half ruined. But inside, still functional, was a war table and the commander of the invasion. He wore ancient armor, a relic from the rebellion years. "I told them," the old Kernan growled, "that the Zalaran princess would betray her blood for a human." They laughed. "But I knew you were weak." Valera stepped forward, covered in ash, eyes glowing with fury. "You see weakness because I chose peace. But peace requires more strength than you'll ever understand. You side with the ape. I side with the one who kept his promise. When your kind vanished into the dark, he stood by me." Ryan raised his rifle. "I'm done talking." The old commander laughed. "And I'm done waiting." He activated something. An old nuclear core set into the floor. The tower groaned. "It'll destroy the city," Valera hissed. "Then we die as legends," the Kernans said. But Ryan was already moving. He dove past the commander, hit the control panel. Locked. It needed 2 key signatures, Zalaran and human. He looked to Valera. She didn't hesitate. They slammed palms down together. The system beeped. Power drained. The core powered down. The Kernan roared and lunged. Ryan met him midair, grappling, twisting, falling. They crashed through the side of the tower. The drop was brutal. Ryan hit hard, rolled, and didn't move. Valera screamed. She leapt after him, landing in a crouch beside his motionless body. Enemy soldiers began to close in. Then he groaned. "Not dead," he muttered. "Just broken. Maybe a rib or 4. She smiled through tears, pulling him up. And then the defenders arrived. Zalaran elites, armored, furious, and burning with vengeance. The tide turned. The battle ended an hour later. Calm returned slowly. Ash fell like snow. Fires were still burning. But the city stood. Inside the infirmary, Ryan woke up to Valera at his side. She looked down at him, quiet. "You could have let me die and gone home. I told you 10 years ago," he whispered, "that I'd marry you one day. Doesn't work if you're not alive." Her fingers curled into his. "You kept the ring. You kept the promise. You even kept me alive. You're worth the war," he said. She leaned close. "You're the war and the peace, human." And outside, the galaxy began to whisper about them, about the human who came back with a ring and the alien girl who had once saved him. They were no longer children. They were becoming legend. The halls of Zalara's ancient temple had not seen a gathering like this in generations. Pillars carved from moonstone stretched high into the sky, reflecting light from 100 hovering crystal lamps. Ambassadors, warriors, and elders from every known world stood in stunned silence as Valera, daughter of the starlit bloodline, walked side by side with the human who had once been a child lost in war. Ryan wore a ceremonial robe, but the scars across his hands and jaw were visible. He didn't hide them. Let them see what 10 years of pain, survival, and loyalty looked like. Valera's dress shimmered like the sea during dawn. Her silver hair was braided with symbols of peace and fire. But the most important detail, more than her armor, her title, her crown, was the small ring on her finger. A simple human design, forged from earth steel and engraved with the words, "Still here." As they reached the center dais, the temple priest raised her staff. "Speak your final words," she said softly, "and let them echo across the stars." Valera turned to face him, voice steady despite the weight of millions watching through broadcasts and recordings. "You came back," she said. "After everything. After exile, after betrayal, after war. You came back not with armies, not with ships, but with a promise you never forgot." "I remembered every day," Ryan replied, his voice quiet but unshakable. "Even when I had nothing, I held on to one truth. I told you I would marry you, and nothing in this galaxy was going to stop me." Gasps echoed through the chamber, not from surprise, but reverence. The priest nodded. Then by the bond of choice and oath, you are united. But even before the words finished, the sky outside lit up again. This time, not from war. Every major faction in the region, human and alien alike, had sent ships to watch. From orbit, their hulls reflected sunlight like stars. And as the vow was sealed, a new signal was broadcast from Zalara. A declaration of alliance. Not just between two people, but between species. A unity sealed not by treaties, but by the bond of a child's promise kept across time, pain, and war. Back in the temple, Valera placed her forehead against Ryan's. Do you know, she whispered, when you first said you'd marry me, I thought it was just a child's dream. Then you've clearly forgotten how stubborn I am. They both laughed quietly, an intimate, private moment amid all the grandeur. Later, as celebrations unfolded across the galaxy, a soldier on a distant outpost looked at the footage and murmured, that human, he didn't just win her heart. He won the future. And far beyond, where warlords still plotted and empires still clung to hatred, a single truth now echoed like thunder. If one human could do that, what happens when the rest of them start making promises and keeping them?